Fort Wayne. It's the second biggest city in Indiana, as well as a vibrant center of industry, arts, and culture. Most importantly, though, it's home for many of us. But what makes Fort Wayne famous? What makes our city so well known across the Midwest? Is it our strong manufacturing industry, our rejuvenated downtown area, or is it our fervent minor league sports fandom? I would argue that none of these things are what strike out of towners as the most interesting or unique parts about Fort Wayne.
I would instead argue that the most famous thing about Fort Wayne is that it is the final resting place of this man.
John Chapman, better known today as Johnny Appleseed.
Now, we've all heard of Johnny Appleseed. His legend is taught nationally across the U.S. to new children every single year. However, we as residents of Fort Wayne know surprisingly little about this man and his actual life. So, who was Johnny Appleseed really, and how much of the urban legend about him is true? Did he really not wear shoes? Did he really wear a pot on his head? How about his famous acts of kindness and his preaching? Were those just a part of the legend as well? Finally, how did Johnny Appleseed contribute to making Fort Wayne the wonderful city that it is today? I aim to answer all of these questions and figure out where the legend of Johnny Appleseed ends and the man, John Chapman, begins.
To get to the bottom of who Johnny Appleseed really was, I had to speak to a true expert on the man, and the closest group of experts I could find were in Urbana, Ohio, at the Johnny Appleseed Educational Center and Museum, which is just a short drive from Fort Wayne. At the museum, I was lucky enough to get to speak with Robin Ferryman, the archivist there, and a Johnny Appleseed expert herself.
He was a real person, and he was really significant. And when the early settlers came to America and the way things went, he was born in March of 1774 in Leominster, Massachusetts. Now, his father was in the Revolutionary War, and so he was gone doing that stuff there. And so John Chapman, early on in his life, also apprenticed with an orchardist out there in Massachusetts.
So Johnny Appleseed was in fact a real man named John Chapman. But why did an orchardist born in Massachusetts come to the Midwest in Fort Wayne of all places?
They were trying to tame this wilderness that was America. And the people were moving out west. They were in the Revolutionary War. People were granted land in exchange for their services. They weren't able to be paid, so they got paid in land. So Chapman was really smart and a good businessman, and he started moving west on his own, and he was known for finding prime land for growing crops and trees and stuff. Well, when they were to claim land, you were required to plant an orchard of at least 50 acres or 50 trees, and it was either peaches or apples. So that was absolutely necessary. It proved your stability. It proved that you were really going to be here, and it also, if you had to move on, it claimed your land for you too. So he was going ahead and planting these.
Now that it is clear that the Midwest was a frontier at the time, which presented many new business opportunities to an apple orchardist like Chapman, we can begin to understand his motivations for being here a little bit better. However, one of the major motivations of Chapman's life hasn't been discussed yet, and that is his religious faith. Luckily though, John Beatty at the Allen County Public Library's Genealogy Center was happy to explain some of Chapman's more unique religious beliefs.
Well, this time period in the 1830s was a time called the Second Great Awakening, and there was a renewed interest in religion in the United States at this period. Johnny Appleseed became fascinated by a Swedish theologian named Emanuel Swedenborg. So it was certainly a very important part of his life. He was very spiritual in his philosophy, and he did not believe in killing animals. He became a vegetarian. He became a person who was concerned about the environment and the surroundings of nature, and he was really maybe our first ecologist in this area. So that makes him an important figure, and so his spirituality was very much tied to his lifestyle.
So what made Chapman unique was his job, lifestyle, and religion. However, what made him the legend that he is today were the stories of his eccentric ways, which apparently he had a small hand in growing himself.
Johnny Appleseed was quite eccentric and quite unusual, and he really stood out in his time because of his itinerancy and the fact that he didn't seem to settle down, didn't seem to want to have a family, didn't seem to want to have a traditional lifestyle. There's a story of of an evangelist who was preaching on a street corner, and it said, "Where is the natural Christian out there among us?" And he said, "I'm the natural Christian," and he stood on a stump with his bare feet, and was dressed in rags, and it was a symbol of his unusual lifestyle. So I think he was pretty unusual and eccentric.
They say he was a great storyteller. He loved children. And when he was with a family with children, he would love to entertain the kids with stories. And it's my belief, my theory, that he created a lot of his own legends. I mean, it would be easy to see him with his little cooking pot, putting it on his head, telling these kids, regaling them with stories about how he wore it in the rain or something to make them giggle or laugh.
So Johnny Appleseed was a well-meaning, eccentric, forest-wandering orchardist who helped found many settlements all across the Midwest, including Fort Wayne. But why is he still important to learn about today? I spoke to Bridget Kelly, one of the organizers of the Johnny Appleseed Festival, to discuss why she thinks Johnny Appleseed is still relevant to this day.
You know, there are some people for whom the country's history is just a very interesting area of study. There was his kindness, there was his generous spirit, there was his ties to nature and of all things, you know, natural, and that just really resonates, I think, with a lot of people. It's going back to a time when things were simpler and things seemed to be more clear-cut.
I, for one, think it is important that we acknowledge and learn about the people who gave us the values that make our home the place that it is today. So to you, Mr. John Chapman, Johnny Appleseed, I say thank you for establishing the values that make Fort Wayne the wonderful place that it is to live today. I hope that we can all carry an ounce of the kindness that you had in all of our own hearts as we shape this city in making it what it needs to be going forward into the future.